Alright guys, so let me show you how you can assemble passes within After Effects. Alright, so here I have my sequence that we just rendered, and as you see here, it's a full camera turn and dolly out to the large shot. I'm actually using the discover method. I'm discovering my interior space from the zooming into the objects into the wide shot, the long shot. Alright, so let me show you how you can bring it to After Effects, do some color correction to it, add some passes in order to improve your photorealistic look, and of course export it as a video file. Alright, so I'm gonna open my After Effects and press New Composition. Here you can find your presets. If you don't have any preset that you want to use, like this HDTV 1080, because you rendered HD resolution 1280 on 720, this is what I did with mine, HD, not a full HD. You can just go ahead and press Custom, set your width and height. You can press lock the aspect ratio, which is supposed to be 16:9. Your pixel ratio can be square pixel. This one works for me well. Others can be used for 1080 full HD, and we're gonna use 24 frames per second as our frame rate. The length is according to your sequence, so the duration here you can set up as long as your sequence goes. Alright, so I'm gonna press OK. By the way, if you right click on your composition settings, you can always go back. It's a good thing to give your files names, so let's call it French Scene Passes Assembly. Click OK. So we can see here new composition was created. Now I can start importing my sequences. So I'm gonna press import file, and I'm gonna go to my French scene animation, and as you see here, all my files, all my sequence files located here. So I'm gonna press on the first one. Just make sure your PNG sequence is on and you're on footage. Click open and you'll be able to bring that footage in. Now by default, when you're bringing that footage in, you need to go to interpret footage, click main, and change the frame rate to be 24. Otherwise it will run too fast and it will not match your composition frame rate. So we're gonna put it 24, and now we can drag and drop it on our timeline. And as you can see here, our footage being played. Oops. In our timeline. Alright, I'm gonna press here fit, so that my all composition will fit in the window. Alright, so we have the footage, it's pretty clean. We don't have much overexposed areas, which is pretty good. I mean, even that we have a little bit exposed area, it's not really overexposed, so it's something that we can work with. Alright, so the next thing is to start adding passes upon it in order to improve your appearance of that sequence. So let's bring our global illumination. Same here, we need to go into interpret footage and set it to 24 frames per second. Otherwise it will be too short. Alright, drag and drop upon this file, and you can set the blending mode to be overlay. As you can see, this added a lot of contrast to our image. So by reducing its opacity, we can actually find a really nice balanced addition to what we had in compared to our original pass. Alright, the next one going to be reflection right here. So also click open, bring it in. So let me show you what happened if I don't set the frame rate. As you see here, it comes too short. So don't forget to interpret footage and change the frame rate to be 24. That way it will be long enough to match your whole composition. Right, so here as well we're going to go and change the blending mode to be screen. As we know, screen removes the blacks, and we need to remove the blacks here. Maybe this pass is not the best pass to use for reflections. You might want to use a basic one, not a raw reflection, just a simple reflection with their filters. But just for the sake of this idea and quick assembly, I'm gonna use the raw reflection pass. All right, the next one is going to be raw refraction right here. You don't need to select the first one, just select one of those files and it will bring the whole footage automatically, because After Effects can recognize if it's an image sequence or not, as long as all your images have sequential numbers, names. Alright, so here as well we're gonna set this on blending mode screen in order to remove blacks, same methods we use in Photoshop, and then just to reduce the opacity. So all the refracted areas, we have curtains here that also getting a little bit of refraction. They kind of transparent, not as transparent as glass, but we can see that those guys also get a little bit transparency in them. So somewhere about here could work fine for this sake of that idea. All right, the next one is going to be, let's see, self-illumination. This is a really nice pass. As you see here, my lamp bulbs on my chandelier right here are self-illuminated. And we have also the Jedi Lego toy. We have a Jedi sword here that also a little bit illuminated. So let me put this on the screen mode in order to remove blacks. So as you see here, we have a Jedi toys, and we have illumination on our self-illuminated VRay lights on the bulbs. So actually I'm using this pass in order to add a little bit more realism, because we have already, if I'm gonna hide and unhide, it doesn't bring much, it just emphasizes a little bit better the lights. So what I like to do is I like to add blur, Gaussian blur to it, just to blur them a little bit so they will shine a little bit more. I'm gonna drag and drop, and I'm gonna add a little bit more blur to it. Something like this. Alright, so we have really nice blurry. The Jedi sword doesn't get much blur to it, but we can see it definitely in our lamps, which is pretty cool. Alright, so the next one is, need to go back to my project and bring in the next pass, which is going to be Specular. Specular is those really nice soft shadows, soft reflections that our objects get. It's all the blurry reflections. Everything that is blurry pretty much is specular. So I'm gonna put this upon that, and as you see here, all those blurry reflections are start to work as soon as I'm gonna put this layer on the screen mode right here. So this actually adds a lot. We can see our door, everything, all the specular becomes really nice. All the toys here, also the bed, really nice appearance for the materials. If it's too strong, you can also lower the opacity just to match a little bit better the entire scene. So something like that, around 70 could work good. Next one is going to be total lighting. As you see here, I have also Z depth. So after that, we're going to import Z depth, and I'm gonna show you how to do some depth of field with it. But generally speaking, total lighting is another good path to add some contrast. All right, so I'm gonna make it 24, and I'm gonna go into my blending modes, and I'm gonna put it on the classic color burn, or we can also use a regular color burn effect to it, but they're pretty much the same. So as you see here, it's really dark, so you have to be very careful not to overdo it, overuse it. So something like that, just to add a little contrast to it. Somewhere around 10, something like that. Around 10 would work fine. Just improving the whole entire contrast, and we see that all our other maps starting to get depth. All right, so the next would be Z depth. We have also rendered Z depth, so why don't we just import the Z depth. This pass is, if we bring it to our composition, this pass can be used to do fog and to do some lens blur, but you need to calculate it. You need to calculate the distance in 3ds Max, distance of your camera, how wide or how spread wide your Z depth path supposed to be. All right, so make sure you calculate it properly. And as you see here, I'm getting my Z depth. I can see all my objects here. Now I need to hide this pass, and then I need to go and find my first layer, my primary layer, and add to this layer camera lens blur right here. So we can see that we added a little bit of a lens blur. Now if we go and select our Z depth in the layer here, we can start and manipulating the focal length. So I'm gonna add a little bit more blur, so you can see how my background is getting blurry and my foreground is less. And as soon as I'm zooming out, I can play with that Z depth where I want to have it. So generally speaking, I'm gonna use it just slightly on the foreground. I'm not gonna use too much, about 2 or 3%, just to give that slight blurriness in order to navigate the eye a little bit better. So I want my eye to concentrate a little bit more here, so I'm gonna blur my door and my background a little bit more. And when I'm zooming out, I actually want to concentrate on that. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna put a keyframe here on the blur distance. I'm gonna put another keyframe on my first frame. So I'm just gonna do it like this, and I'm gonna lower that so my foreground gets a little bit blurry. Probably around 2 would be fine. So generally speaking, my foreground is not completely 100% sharp, but my background is. So on that shot, my background a little bit more of a blur here, and my foreground is 100% sharp. Somewhere here in between it starts to switch, which is good. This in this purpose, why am I doing this, is just to add a little bit of motion blur, a little bit of blurriness, because camera moves pretty fast, and just to to smooth it a little bit, to be pleasant for a viewer to watch and observe that. This is why we do it. Generally speaking, this effect you should put upon the whole composition, not on only one layer, because all other layers are going to be sharp, but I'm putting it on this particular layer just to give a little bit blurriness of a motion blur. There's another way, another technique to use motion blur by using velocity pass. This we're going to discover in our other tutorials. However, in this one, this is what I'm going to show you right now. It's a quick and easy way to have a little bit of a natural motion blur to your composition. All right, so when you're done here doing this, the last and the final pass supposed to be ambient occlusion, as you see here, AO. This is something that I rendered separately, even though I used a method that burns ambient occlusion into the image. I actually burned my ambient occlusion, as you can see here. My ambient occlusion is kind of burned inside of that image. The GI is not that good for flicker-free animation calculation with light cache and light cache. So this is the reason why I'm actually burning the ambient occlusion in it. Alright, so let's drag and drop this here and set it to have 24 frames and make it fit. As you see here, I have ambient occlusion pass. Unfortunately, those that came out to be black, those guys are flipped faces. So if you have any object, you just need to go select polygons, make editable poly, and flip those in order to not to have those black spots also in this little Lego figure here. But all the rest is pretty good, pretty much okay. So it's not that big deal if you have those little pitches of black. I'm gonna put this on the multiply, because multiply is the opposite from screen. Screen removes blacks, multiply removes whites. So I'm going to remove white, and I'm gonna get a really nice ambient occlusion pass right here. So as you see here, it's a little bit too strong, so you need to lower the opacity a little bit just to match better. However, before you lower the opacity, what I like to do is to give it a little bit color correction. Color correction, color balance right here. So I'm gonna drag and drop it on that file, and as you see here, I get color balance. The best way is to zoom in a little bit and to see how this affects your image. So I'm gonna give a little bit yellowish tone to it, just to match a little bit better my composition here, because natural gray sometimes do not fit perfectly. So by changing the, as you can see, I'm adding kind of yellowish and it fits much better. This is the gray, we can see the gray, and we can see how kind of yellowish color balance works here. But by adding a little bit of yellowish and reddish tones, our color balance starts to look much better. Alright, so let's go ahead and lower the opacity of this. We need to fit the whole thing. That way we can match it much better. So I don't like to put too strong, but somewhere around 12, 11, 12, 14 actually could be good. Alright, something like this, 11. Alright, you can also duplicate this if you have different corners. You can add ambient occlusion to those corners to have better GI. One of the main laws for adding ambient occlusion is that light in points like this, if the light hits directly, you probably will not gonna see any ambient occlusion. However, in the dark areas, dark corners like this one that is not being hit directly by light, you will see much better ambient occlusion. All right, so as you see here, my ambient occlusion works much better. It gives kind of more definition to all the objects in the scene. Here you can even see it on the back wall and some door around the M and around this flower vase of flowers. So it kind of adds a little bit more of softness and pops out the detail a little bit more. Alright, so when you have combined all your passes together, you can go ahead and create new composition and call it French scene main, because this is going to be our main composition. And you can drag and drop your passes assembly to that main composition. And now you can do color correction on it, do the color balance, and of course other realistic stuff. I like to work with Looks Builder, so we'll do the color collection later. I like to do the first the Looks Builder. Looks Builder got really nice photorealistic effects, and it produces really good cinematic look to your footage. Alright, so this I'm going to show you in the next tutorial.